Welcome to the cinematic guide to witchcraft. This is Rare. Our next lessons come from the 1996 cult classic, The Craft. Number 1. The Sacred Circle. In the opening scenes, we meet a timid teenage girl named Sarah. She, her father, and her stepmother are moving into an old mansion, overgrown with vines in the middle of Los Angeles, California. As if delivering a bad omen, a menacing man arrives at the door, holding a snake and petrifying Sarah. Later, Sarah begins classes at a private Catholic school, where the students are arrogant and unwelcoming. She struggles with finding her place in the new school and seeking out new friends. Meanwhile, 3 other girls gather around a reading of their horoscope, which predicts that it is they who ought to be seeking out Sarah.
A new wholeness and with it a new balance. Earth, air, water, fire. Maybe it's our 4th.
Nancy, Rochelle, and Bonnie are 3 spiritual witches who have formed a strong sisterhood. We can assume that they initially bonded over their outcast status and the hardships they face in their individual lives. Bonnie lacks confidence due to large scars on her back from a childhood accident. Rochelle is the victim of constant, racist attacks from other students. And Nancy desperately wants to escape a life of poverty and abuse. They have already began dabbling in magic together, and most of the school already suspects they're witches.
It's the bitches of Eastwick. They're witches.
But the 3 novice witches haven't yet formed a complete coven. You see, without a 4th witch to complete the circle, their spells and magic do not work. The circle has an ancient and powerful purpose in the divine universe. Historically, the circle has symbolized wholeness, perfection, and unity. As for witches, the circle also brings power and protection. And the circle is tied to other universal principles which are connected with the number 4. These include the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. And the 4 cardinal directions: north, east, south, and west. The more witches a coven has, the more powerful it becomes. However, a coven must have at least 4 witches to represent these 4 principles, and to complete the circle. The cunning Bonnie is well aware of this, and keeps her eye on Sarah. It is clear to Bonnie that Sarah is a witch. She tries to persuade the other girls to allow Sarah to join the coven. But despite Bonnie's enthusiasm, Nancy and Rochelle are not yet convinced of Sarah's compatibility. Later, the trio approach Sarah and ask her out for coffee. And after a dose of peer pressure, Sarah agrees. While walking downtown, a small part of Sarah's dark history is revealed. Sarah's mother died while giving birth to her. And Sarah has suffered from overwhelming guilt, grief, and depression, culminating in a suicide attempt not too long ago. The girls arrive at a store of the occult where they meet a friendly witch named Lirio. Lirio introduces Sarah to the basics of witchcraft, but more importantly can see Sarah for what she truly is.
You know, I've never read anything about this stuff before. I mean, I don't follow it.
Maybe you're a natural witch. Your power comes from within.
Upon leaving the store, the same menacing man from Sarah's doorstep chases after Sarah. The other girls sense Sarah in danger, and all 4 girls gaze at the man as he walks into the street and is hit by a car. After rushing to a safe place, the girls are convinced that it was their collective powers which willed the car to hit the man. In both shock and awe, the girls conclude that Sarah is in fact their 4th. And by completing their circle, their magic is real.
Well then that's it, you guys. Sarah's the 4th. North, south, east, and west. We can make things happen. I mean, this is it. This is real.
Number 2. The Almighty Manon. In the same moments that follow the man's death. And while the girls are still in a state of exultation from expressing their powers for the first time, they enlighten Sarah on who is Manon. Manon is an all-knowing and all-powerful deity. He should not be confused with God, nor Satan, as he is superior to them both, as well as more ancient. Manon is the creator of all things, and he is nature itself. He is the rays of light from the sun, the soil and the earth, and everything in between. He is neither good nor evil. And while carefully watching over mankind, he does not interfere with their free will or their destiny. He does, however, bestow gifts upon those who invoke him, granting desires, bestowing powers, and even manifesting through a witch.
It's like he fills you. He takes everything that's gone wrong in your life, and he makes it all better again.
But heed this warning. Despite the generosity of Manon, one must never abuse his gifts, or else he will smite you with great vengeance. A witch will be punished for misusing Manon's gifts. And that punishment can include deprivation of powers, diminishment of abilities, and even death. Yet in the face of it all, the witches still fearlessly worship the omnipresent Manon, who is always listening for their call. Number 3. Initiation of a Coven. Sarah is apprehensive about witchcraft and alarmed by the rest of the girls' enthusiasm over what they believe magic can do, and what problems Manon can solve for them. But despite her trepidation, she accepts the invitation into Nancy, Rochelle, and Bonnie's circle, and the 4 girls become very close sisters, sharing most of their time together as well as their hopes, fears, joys, and pains.
Girls, watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
To make their coven official, the 4 witches come together in nature to conduct a coven initiation ritual. Nature is sacred to witches as they believe all things in the universe are connected, from the plants to the animals to their own powers. And therefore, they take their most sacred vow, their pledge to their coven, as close to nature as possible. The first step is grounding, an important exercise to connect oneself to the vibrations of the earth. The witches gather in a circle and chant the 4 elements as they embrace Mother Nature and synchronize with the rhythms of the earth.
Earth, air, fire, water, water, air, 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 air.
Next, each witch takes a ceremonial knife, called an athame, points it at their sister witch's heart, and exchange the following ceremonial oath.
It is better that you should rush upon this blade than enter this circle with fear in your heart. How do you enter? With perfect love and perfect trust.
Finally, the blood bond. Each member of the coven must take in part of their sisters. The 4 girls prick their finger, contributing a drop of blood into a chalice, and drink, signaling completion, transformation, or even perhaps approval. Manon graces the 4 witches with a cascade of fluttering butterflies.
It's Manon.
It's so beautiful.
Number 4. Positive energy magic. Lirio explains to the girls that witchcraft is neither white nor black, good nor bad. True magic is both, because nature is both, loving and cruel all at the same time. The only good or bad is in the heart of the witch. One type of witchcraft channels positive energies. This type of magic is used for benevolent purposes, to bring happiness, healthfulness, and heartfulness. The type of magic which is most used to bring cures, protection, and love. The time has come for the witches to finally realize their powers and begin to seize their deepest desires. For Bonnie, what her heart desires most is the power to be beautiful outside as well as in. Bonnie's scars have crushed her self-worth, and she even undergoes an experimental and painful needling procedure with uncertain results. During the Coven initiation ritual, Bonnie casts a spell on herself for the scars to vanish from her body. Later, she also conducts a ritual with Nancy, asking Manon to take her scars. The spells work, and Bonnie's scars miraculously heal. Now, she is full of confidence, but perhaps she has instead become narcissistic.
Homeroom starts at 8:45 sharp.
Sorry, my pedicure ran late.
The innocent love spell is what Sarah desires. A love spell cast on a boy she met at school, named Chris. Chris was nice to Sarah and showed interest in her. After school one night, Chris and Sarah meet on a rooftop. He asks her to come over to his house, and implies that he wants to take their connection to a physical level. But Sarah declines. Sarah's rejection causes Chris to feel shame about his manhood, and thus, he spreads a rumor about Sarah the next day, telling people that they actually did hook up, and that Sarah was lousy. But despite Chris's hurtful betrayal, Sarah still likes Chris, so she casts the love spell on him. The spell works, and the boy follows her around, carrying her books, and is under Sarah's complete control. But perhaps it's the magic that is really controlling him.
Do not compare thyself to the Heavenly Father. Do not try to even know what only God...
Number 5. Negative energy magic. Sometimes witches require witchcraft that channels negative energies. It's the type of magic that can bring suffering, anguish, and destruction. Witches use this magic to inflict pain, profit from others' misfortune, and also seek revenge. But, as mentioned before, negative energy magic does not necessarily mean bad. Sometimes it's justified. Rochelle has had enough of the constant, disgusting racism and bullying spewed at her by a fellow student named Laura. With a little help from Sarah, who collects a strand of Laura's hair and then braids it into Rochelle's hair. The 2 witches conjure up a wickedly powerful beauty spell. The effects on Laura are extreme hair loss, followed by grotesque boils on the scalp. Not to mention, the loss of the only things Laura ever valued, her beauty and popularity.
It just keeps falling out. I don't understand it.
As for Nancy, she is seen woefully walking in the rain to her home, which happens to be a trailer. She and her mother are low income, and she struggles with this and what it means for her future. On top of this, her stepfather is physically and sexually abusive. One night, Nancy reaches a boiling point when the fighting between her mother and her stepfather turns violent. Overcome with rage, channeling her powers, Nancy ends up killing her stepfather with a heart attack. She feels a sense of freedom now that her abuser is gone. And thanks to a life insurance policy, her and her mother are also collecting a very sizable profit. Number 6. Invocation of the Spirit. Manon has been lavishly generous to the 4 witches thus far, granting them powers and bestowing to them many gifts. But for Nancy, it's not enough. She craves more. More indulgence. More magic. More power. She decides to conduct the Invocation of the Spirit ritual. A very dangerous ritual, requiring advanced experience with witchcraft, mental and physical strength, and spiritual virtue. The 4 witches make their way to the beach, each carrying a sacrifice. Sarah, a bird; Bonnie, a butterfly; Rochelle, a fish; and Nancy, a serpent. The witches assemble into their circle, raise their hands, and call on the 4 corners. Each corner represents a cardinal point, an element, and a corresponding divine essence. They are the East, with air and invention; the South, with fire and feeling; West, with water and intuition; and the North, with earth and motherhood. They then recite an additional incantation and chant. Upon awakening in the morning, Nancy reveals that she has successfully invoked the spirit of Manon. And in addition to blessing her with immense powers and abilities, Manon has also gifted Nancy a shiver of sharks that have washed upon the beach overnight. Nancy becomes drunk with power. Reckless, domineering, and spiritually corrupt. Her new life and her new powers all begin to turn Nancy dark. And she dangerously abuses the gifts Manon has granted her. Likewise, Bonnie and Rochelle also seem careless and irresponsible with their magic. Sarah remains the only witch taking a cautious approach, and tries to warn the other witches of the dangers of playing with fire.
It's like what Lyria was talking about, throwing things out of balance. I know you guys think we're getting what we want now, but it's gonna come back to us threefold.
Number 7. The Threefold Law. The boy who began simply as Sarah's pet can no longer contain the love spell cast upon him. When casting any spell, you unleash it, like opening a floodgate. There is no undoing them, and therefore, they are unstoppable, and must be allowed to run their course. Chris becomes more and more obsessed with Sarah, and against her better judgment, Sarah agrees to go out with him. While on their date, Chris can't control himself. He lunges at Sarah, and she flees. He chases after her, and attempts to assault her. Thankfully she escapes, and seeks comfort from her sisters. Nancy decides to go after Chris.
Just leave it alone. Don't go. You're not gonna help any. I'm gonna go play.
At a party, Nancy finds a drunken Chris. Nancy has unrequited feelings for Chris, and she tries to seduce him, but he rejects her advances. She places a glamour on herself to give her the appearance of Sarah. But the real Sarah rushes in looking for Nancy, and discovers the 2 of them on the bed. The climax of events rise as Nancy becomes more and more enraged, especially after Chris claims that Nancy is jealous of his love for Sarah. Terrifying Chris up against the wall, Nancy spirals into madness, resulting in Chris being thrust out the window by Nancy's powers and falling to his death. It's become apparent to Sarah that the magic her coven is using is causing adverse consequences, and she regrets becoming part of it. The next day, Nancy, Rochelle, and Bonnie confront Sarah about wanting to leave the circle. Although Sarah denies the allegations, the other witches threaten her life. Terrified of her sisters, Sarah seeks help from Lyria, who explains to her the Threefold Law.
Whatever you send out, you get back ×3.
The Threefold Law is the most ancient of all principles. It is a basic universal truth, said in many ways in many different cultures and religions. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This law was created by the ancient gods to ensure that the natural order remains balanced. All the magic the witches use will come back to them, threefold. And all their actions will face consequences, in one way or another. Indifferent to the Threefold Law, the other witches torment Sarah. They invade her dreams, use deceptive illusion to convince her that her parents were killed in a plane accident, incite visions of snakes, rodents, and insects. And they cut Sarah, faking a suicide attempt, and also blame her for Chris's death.
What's wrong with your scars, Sarah?
On the verge of death, Sarah is guided by the spirit of her mother, who is also a witch, and takes the brave step to invoke the spirit of Manon. Manon heals Sarah's wounds and grants her ultimate power. She fights back against the other witches, clamoring Bonnie and Rochelle to give them a little taste of the law of threefold. Sarah then moves on to Nancy, hexing out some payback to her as well. But Sarah also returned from invoking the Spirt with a very dire message for Nancy.
He came to me. Saved me. Oh, and he wanted me to give you a message. You're in deep shit. He says you've abused what he's given you, and now you're gonna have to pay the price.
After the two battle it out, Sarah ultimately places the binding spell on Nancy by chanting, "I bind you from doing harm. Harm against other people. And harm against yourself." Several days pass. Bonnie and Rochelle, finding their powers gone, approach Sarah, asking for forgiveness. They want to reconcile, and form another coven. But Sarah is uninterested. As they walk away, they mutter under their breath that Manon probably took away her powers too. And Sarah retorts by dropping a tree branch on them. The story ends, showing Nancy, completely mad, strapped to a hospital bed, convinced that she can fly. Thank you for watching Chapter 2 of the Cinematic Guide to Witchcraft. Please like and subscribe. And leave a comment below which movie you would like to see next. And for more ways in which you can support this channel, visit the links located in the description below.